Hello everybody, welcome back to our HTML and CSS tutorial. In the previous episode, we have discussed how to add a video inside a website, and in this episode, we are going to learn how to create a form in HTML. And this will be the form we are going to be creating for today's episode. So without wasting any much time, let's go back into our text editor and start writing the code for our form. First of all, we will start by adding a div tag like this. And let's give a class to our div like this, and let's call the class of this div a container, and let's come down and create maybe like a h2 tag since it is for a form, and let's add the title sign off, or let's say sign off form like this, and let's come down and create our form tag like this. For the action, let's just leave it this page with adding a hashtag like this. We'll come back to it later, but for now let's leave it like this, and let's start with adding a label for our input. Let's say this label should be for our first name like this, and let's add the title first name like this. Let's just add a colon like this, and let's add an input like this, and let's leave it type to text since this is for a name and name contains mainly text. Let's give it a class maybe, or let's just give it a name. Let's leave the class for now. Let's give it a name, and the name should be, let's say the name should be first name like this, and let's add it to be required like this, and let's leave this one like this for now, and let's come down and create another label like this, and this label should be for our middle name since some people have three names: first name, second name, and the middle name and the last name, sorry. And let's give it the title like some text of, let's say, middle name like this. For the input, let's also create a text input like this. Let's leave it a type text, and let's give it a name like this. Let's give it the name of middle name like this, and this one should not be required since not everybody has a middle name. And to just make it easy, let's come down and create another label like this, and this label should be for our last, or let's just leave it in small letter, last name like this, and let's add this title last name like this, and let's come and add its input also with type text like this, type text, and let's give it a name of, let's say, last name like this, and let's also make it required since as long as you have first name, you're supposed to have a last name. Last name is also required, and the importance of adding this required is that you cannot leave it blank. This field cannot be left blank. That is the function of adding the required attribute, and let's come and create another label like this, and this label should be for our email like this. We're just supposed to add the email title like this, and I forget to add the colon like this. And let's come down and create another import, and this import should not be type text, it should be type email like this. Sorry. And let's give it a name, and the name should be email as well, and it should also be required like this. Required because email is necessary when you are creating an account. So let's come and create another label for our, I think let's create this label for our date of birth like this. Let's leave it DOB, and let's add the title of date of birth like this. And let's come down and add an input of type date like this, and let's give it a name, and the name should be DOB as in date of birth, and let's also make it a required input because we really need that when creating a sign-up form. And the next thing we need, it should be, I think, our password. Yeah, we need a password. So let's create another label for our password like this. Let's say PWD as in password, and or you can just write it complete, password like this. But you know, using shortcuts is very important as an abbreviation, but for now let's just use the password, and let's give it like this, password like this. And I forget to add something here, the colon. Let's add it here also, and let's come and create the input type for our password input. Sorry, it should be like this, input. Let's make it type password also, and let's give it a name, and the name should be password. Yes, and it should also be required like this. And let's come down and create another input. Let me just copy what I did here with Ctrl C, and let's paste it here like this with Ctrl V. It is also type password, but inside let's make it for confirm. It should be confirm password like this. And for the name, it should also be compound password like this, and it's also required. So right now the only thing we need, I think what we need next is a button like this, the button that we're going to press after we finish adding all the details we need. And the button should also be type submit. Let's make it type submit, and let's add the title sign up in our button. And now let's save it with Ctrl S and go back inside our browser, and let's close this one since we're going to be designing it in this tab, and let's press refresh. As you can see, what we just added in our text editor has appeared, but it is not styled. Right now you can click in and see like this, like for the tab birth, type date of birth. You can see you can choose your date, and for the type password, and our button is right here, sign up. Alright, let's go back inside our text editor now and style it. And for the styling, let's open up our style sheet that is right here, like this. Let's start with our body tag, like this. We're going to be styling the entire body of our page. Let's start by changing the font family. Let's start with the font family, and let's give it a font family of something like Arial, like this. Since we have always been using sans serif, today let's change to something else. And for the background color of the body, it should be, let me just copy a color to make it fast. I already have the colors stored on my clipboard, so let's just paste it. It's a white, but not pure white, a little bit darker, but it is white. And let's remove the margin entirely. Let's make it 0. And for the padding as well, let's remove it. Let's remove the padding to 0. And I think we're done with our body. Let's go to our container, the container we created, and let's style it. Let's give it a max width of, let's say, something like 400 pixel, and let's give it a margin of maybe something like 50 pixel, and let's also add an auto so that it will be only 50 pixel on the top and bottom, and for the right and left it will be auto. And for the background color, let's give it a white background color, like this, pure white. And for the padding, let's give it a padding of 20 pixel. And for the border radius, let's give it something like 8 pixel. It will be alright since it is a little big. And let's add another attribute, let's add another CSS that we have not used before. It is called a box shadow. This is our first time using a box shadow, so let's just copy the color of our box shadow and its direction, and let's paste it right here. It will be going with this color, and I use RGB just to have a different method of adding a color instead of just using the one we have been using before. So let's go for our H2. Let's style our H2. Let's text align it in the center. Text align. Oh, sorry, I mistook the bracket. Instead of using curly bracket, I use normal brackets like this. Let's text align it in the center like this. And for the color, let's give it a color of something a little dark, or let's say dark, because this is a very dark color. Or let's just leave it like that. We don't need to style it much since it is just a text. Let's scroll down a little and let's style our form. And even our form, I don't think we are going to be giving it much styling. Let's just make it display to something like flex, like this. And for our flex direction, let's make it to column. I think column will be okay since they will be arranging in that format. And the next thing should be our label. We will be styling all the label we've created at once. So let's give them a margin bottom of, well, let's go with something low as 8 pixel, and for their color, let's give them a color of, well, let's go with something different like this. And I think the next thing we need to style, it should be our input, all our inputs, and let's give them a padding of 10 pixel like this. And for their margin, let's just change the margin bottom to something of about, let's say, 16 pixel. And for the border, let's make the border 1 pixel solid, 1 pixel, and let's make it solid. And let's add a color for our border since it is solid, and let's just give it something like this, DDD, and this is a little white. So for the border radius, since there is border, I think we should also add a border radius. Let's give it a border radius of something like 4 pixel, since it is just the inputs we're styling. Let's come down and style our button. I think we need to give it some styling as well. So let's start with the padding of our button. It should be something like 12 pixel. And for the background color of our button, let me just copy a color from my notepad. And let's paste it right here with Control V. I'm a fan of blue, so I'm going to style it in blue. And for the color, let's give it a white color. The color of our text, let's give it white. And for the border, I think we should move the border of this one to none, like this. And for the border radius, let's give it a border radius of, let's say, 4 pixel. And for the cursor, let's just use a pointer cursor like this. And let's just scroll a little bit, and I think now we should just leave it like this. Let's go and style the hover of our button like this, and let's style it hover like this. And let's just change the background color of our hover so that it will change to something a little bit dark when we hover around it. And let me just copy a color from my clipboard, Control C, and let me just paste it like this. And I think we're all set. Let's just save it with Control S and go back inside our browser and refresh. As you can see, everything is all set. Let's just zoom in a little bit so that we can be able to see everything clearly like this. This is our form, and if you will remember, we have been adding the required attribute in almost all of our fields. I think the only one we did not add the required attribute to is our middle name. So if we were to hover around this one, you will see it pop in this title, please fill out this field, because it has the required attribute, which in the case of this middle name, it will not pop in the title of please fill in this field because it is not required field. And if we are just to, let's say, skip this one and fill in this one with some random thing, and this one too is also random. And for the type email, since it is an input with type email, it has to have a text like this with @ and another text with dot, maybe dot, whatever it is. It has to detect this @ and the dot, because it is type email. This is the only way it can accept. Let's assume we are just to type some random text like this, and let's just add some random text like this. And for our type date, let's just choose a random date, or let's use today's date, 15th of January. And for the password, let's just use 1234. And also for the type password, you can see the difference when we are typing in our type email, because it is type email, and for our last name, middle name, they are all text. The text will appear, but for the password, it will just view this dot dot dot. And for our confirm password, let's also just type in 1234. For example, we can view what we added with by typing in here like this. But let's assume we are to sign up without filling this first name, which is required. If we were to press sign up, it will bring us back saying please fill out this field. But if we are to fill it as well, if we were to click sign up, it will also pop another thing that this is an email field. It requires the @ and dot, just like here it is showing. So this is important of differentiating them, putting the name field with an input of type text, and for the email we use type email, and for the type date it's obvious, you can see it, and for the type password we also use type password. But still, if we are to submit like this, let's assume we are to fill this right. Let's see, let's use Ismaeel, for example. This is not a real email, I'm just using it randomly. Let's see, Ismaeel at gmail.com, like this. And let's assume we are to sign up like this. The form will just refresh, and our form is using the get method by default, because it is echoing all our input inside our URL right here. As you can see, our first name is here, our middle name, everything is in our URL. It is using type get by default, because we are supposed to specify in our code right here, I think somewhere around here, no sorry, in our form somewhere around here, we're supposed to specify the method like this method, and get it whether type get, post, or dialog. But for now we're just going to use the type get, because we want to see everything in our URL. And I think I made a typo here with our sign up. It's supposed to be sign with an N, sign up form like this. And let's save it and go back inside our browser like this, refresh. As you can see, we have just corrected the typo. And if, let's say, we are to fill in this form with some tutorial, like let's use my info, Ismaeel. I don't have any middle name, so let's go to my surname, and for my email, let's just use a random email. Let's see, Ismaeel at gmail.com. And for the date of birth, let's use today's date, and for the password, let's use 1234. Here also 1234. And let's assume we're to sign up. As you can see, my info has just appeared in our URL. My first name right here is Ismaeel, and my middle name, I don't have any middle name because I did not add it. And for our last name, Abu Bakr, and my email, everything that I just added is inside our URL, as you can see. So this is what happened when we use the get method in our form. And this will be the end of today's lesson. I hope you guys enjoy. See you in the next one. If you are new to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notification so that you won't miss out the next episode.